Hey, what's going on? How you guys doing? Thanks a lot for showing up. There is a lot to talk about. Once again, my name's Todd Waters. Well, people call me Todd Junker also. I've been working on costumes for bands for 17 years. I've been working in film probably for 6 or 7 years now. And that's pretty much what I do. I would say full time for probably about 15 of those years. A couple of those years, a couple of those years, I was still working like some crap jobs that I'm doing. That are but eventually, like if you work on the film, there's no way to really work on the my background, Hey Vaughn, hey Rose, hey Adam, hey Mark, hey Mark. Mention Mark, put together You can see some of this. We can take, I don't know, I hope you guys can't, I don't know about the Tron intro, if you can still hear it or not. That should be hidden. Check, check. Check it a check. Yeah, intro's off now. How's that? There's too much rock and roll. The rock and roll is too loud. Too loud. So you guys, we're good now? Like I said, I'm still learning how to do this. So you should see me by now. Without the fantastic die fast intro created by Mark with some wackadoo like really cool like Tron throwback orange lettering. It's good to know that the rock and roll is louder than the than my droning voice. And so I don't even know what guy it is. I don't think it's Adam. I don't think it's Rust Novel. Somebody asked about aging leather. So if you talk about aging anything, leather or denim, there's a lot of stuff to talk about. And I said, yeah, for sure, dude, I'll talk about it tomorrow. That was on Friday. And then I realized I don't do Rat Talk usually on the weekend at all. But I figured tonight, Sunday, at least I could do like a special about aging and dying leather and denim and all the stuff that happened on Alita. All the tidbits, all the good behind the scenes tidbits, which is probably the same as most other films. Is you have no time to do stuff and it better look good. But that's not, that wasn't true with all the costumes. You have to understand the costumes. So let's talk about what it's like to work on a film versus what it's like to work for a rock and or roll group like the Vanilla Fudge or Motley Crue or Steven Tyler. I would say that the deadlines with bands for the most part are a little more forgiving than working on a film. So I also worked for Black Veil Brides, and I remember that in particular because that was like, I think a week and a half turnaround for all 5 guys in the band for them to go to do some dates in Europe. So if you look at Black Veil Brides, I mean, they're like a rock band, and we did like this black denim Road Warrior stuff, and we gave the singer like a big horse tail, and like they had feather gauntlets, and everything was made to look pretty like nasty, and that was 5 guys. That was complete outfits. I think it was in a week and a half or 2 weeks, and I had, I think, 5 people helping me, and we still like barely made it. So you do get some really crazy stuff going deadline wise with bands, but I would say all in all, bands are a lot easier to deal with. I mean, as far as like the deadlines and stuff, and the reason being, I'm going to tell you like why that is, because the way that they do films and the way that they bring in their actors is most of the reason. But the good thing is, for the most part, once you get a band and you're working with the band, so I work with Motley Crue and Steven Tyler probably for the longest, for like 7 or 8 years, I think, on each of those guys. And Motley Crue was, I've dressed every guy in the band, but I mean, Tommy Lee doesn't really wear clothes, so that was kind of mute. We made a moot point. There's some cool like Junker shirts and stuff. I screen printed some dress shirts and stuff. You can see that on the white outfits promo. That's the Saints of Los Angeles promo pictures that are in black and white. Nikki Sixx is wearing a Junker jacket on that. Yeah, Black Veil Brides. Yeah, like there's a lot of bands. It's hard to remember because some bands you only work with a short period of time, and then that's it. So Black Veil Brides, I think, was 2 different types of outfits. There was a bunch of stuff that had like Black Veil Brides on the back, like that. I think it was like a pentagram heart combo logo back print thing. We did those costumes, which I think were more, wax denim looking. And then I know we definitely did all these crazy, like, post-apocalyptic, nasty-ass costumes that we did. And I think when they were in Europe, the singer's grandfather died, or there was some family tragedy, and that tour was cut short, and then they never called us again, which is, it is how it is. Like, I think they're more clean-looking. The same thing kind of happened to 69 Eyes, I think, as well. Is we went through like a pretty good phase together, and then now it seems like they're more clean, like leather jackets and stuff, not so much dirty anymore. And so I haven't worked for them for a while. But anyway, the point being that when you work with a band, at least you have the measurements for the whole band, so you can go back whenever you have to and just kind of be like, hey man, are you like, fatter or skinnier, or how you feeling? You put on weight, lose weight, how are your pants fitting? Do you want to maybe have a looser fit, or now you want a tighter fit? But generally the measurements and all that stuff don't change a lot. So that is definitely on that's an advantage. So you have that, and then, for instance, like Vince Neil, his pant pattern hasn't changed for, 8 or 9 years. Pants, always the same fit on the pants. They always fit. No problems there. It was always good. And then the tops always fit, for the main reason that there's a thing that I did with starting with Dimmu Borgir and then going through Steven Tyler and then definitely on to Vince Neil, is that when you have a rock and roll performer wearing a trench coat or some kind of huge like great jacket, what I like to do is to make sure that it's cut like this. If you catch my drift. So normally the coat's made to be functional. It's made to like close or at least zip, and then it's going to be flush with itself right here. There's no reason to do that on stage. Unless someone really wants to be on stage in a 1,000-degree leather trench coat that's all like zipped up and all that other stuff. But for the most part, like I like to cut it really wide this way. It looks better on stage for the flow of the piece as far as like the movement, and also at least the guy's not totally suffocating. And you know, when you put on one of these trench coats, you know, talking about, you know, 20, sometimes 30 pounds of leather. And so, you know, when we look at these pictures right here of, let's look at these again. So Ito and Hugo. So these guys I really was involved with a bunch. Like the Hugo jacket is a junker jacket with the collar added. The Ito jacket is a jacket that Nina Proctor, the costume designer, designed from scratch and then was constructed out of leather, the same brown leather that I use on a bunch of other stuff. And we found some really crazy texture leather that you can see on the shoulder, top of the shoulder, and on the collar. That was like super interesting. And you can see the same thing is pretty much done with the Ito coat. So we're talking about this coat in particular when he uses the rocket hammer when he's out as a hunter warrior, is that it does the same trick in the front there. Now the same. It's not made to close; it's made for looks, and you have that nice straight line that's in the front there. And so that's the same trick that's used. Also, like slims people down. It helps a lot. But so we're still talking about a pretty heavy coat. This coat was probably not that bad. It was maybe like 10 or 12 pounds, maybe 15. I mean, it's still all leather. And so that jacket there we made. There was like five of those because in the film. During Ambush Alley, he's injured, and it's really hard to see, but he already had like big tears in his coat that he had already stitched up previously. And then after Ambush Alley, then we had to make more copies of those that were repaired, and we had to make one for Ambush Alley that was before he gets sliced, then one after he's sliced, and so all of a sudden you have like 5 jackets, and so there's a lot of stuff that you have to do to get all the jackets to look the same. There's a lot of processes there. There's a lot of processes with the Hugo jacket as well. And the Hugo jacket, I believe, there was 3 or there might have been 5 also. Because you figure like, Kian's got one. And then Kian's probably got 2 more. And then you have, like, for each of the different stuntmen, you have a couple more. So all of a sudden, yeah, you're up at 5 jackets or so, too. For him, I think it might have been 1 stuntman, or it could have been 2, because I think there was a guy that rode a bike for a little while. I don't even know if they used that footage or not. The monocycle, those badass motorcycles. And then there was definitely a guy that I watched hanging from some scaffolding and stuff one day. Well, you know what? He jumps up onto like a balcony or something. So I saw that getting shot one day, and so that I think was a different guy. So there might have been 3. Alita had, Rosa Salazar had, I think, 5 stunt actors just for her. And it included 1 that was a guy, and then the rest were female. And that included, let's see if I can remember. And if you guys are not interested, just, I don't know, get a coffee. But I try to tell people, especially, like, there's a lot of, like, diehard Alita fans showed up the other day in this stream. Or 2 or 3 or 4, I don't really remember. Anyway, all this Alita information is really good for people who are big fans of the film. I think it's continuing to kind of pick up steam, and I'm going to continue to do stuff that's related to that because there's kind of a lot of information there. And then I remember stuff about it on certain days and then not on other days. It's a good way to introduce people to this channel. and hopefully get people interested in, distressing and dyeing and constructing their own outfits. I mean, the cosplay, community is obviously huge, and there's such a crazy amount of different cosplays you can do. So there's a crazy amount of techniques you could learn. Because there's all the way from Rick Deckard Blade Runner, down to every single thread kind of guys. Everything has to be completely perfect, to people who'll do Mandalorian stuff, which is a cosplay, but there's a lot of creative give and take there, to the EVA foam crowd. Then there's a bunch of Dredd people, Judge Dredd, I mean, and particularly in Star Wars, get into like a lot of molded pieces, 3D printing, like all that stuff I want to cover eventually. But I feel like the basics for aging in denim and leather is like a good place to start, at least with the talks. And then when I'm going to go to LA on Tuesday, and I think I'm going to start filming. We're going to film a couple of snippets of some stuff. So the interesting thing that's coming up, let me tell you the 3 or 4 or 5 different things that are happening with Junker, like in the next couple months. And it, of course, relates to this channel because all the stuff I'd like to show. So next week, I'm not going to make a promise, but working with Kian on some stuff. And so whether or not we do anything on video will be totally up to him. I'm not going to put the dude on the spot. I'll just ask him. Like, I don't, either way, that could possibly be a tutorial about screen printing. And then while I'm there, I'm going to do like kind of mini quick tutorials on denim and leather. And then you're going to hear it here first, kids. We're going to go down the route of the blood drive. Blood Drive 2 is going to happen. So if you're not familiar with that, go ahead and make sure to subscribe. Make sure to like this video, but also go back and watch the other videos around here. There's a great editor, Eric Rosenblatt, that I work with in Los Angeles, and you'll see his work on the blood drive. And the blood drive was basically based on Kiss, the Kiss comics I grew up with. And I always remember that picture. It was like the members of Kiss were putting their blood in this crazy vat, like a big vat of ink, like I guess at Marvel, wherever Marvel was printing their comics, because Marvel did the Kiss comic book. So anyway, flash forward many years, and I think there's a date on the video here. It's a blood drive video in Junker Designs. And then I was like, well, I should do that with t-shirts. So I got a lot of great artists together and did that. And yeah, people liked it, and then some people were just like couldn't deal with it. So once again, I'm gonna be working with a really cool artist named Liz Lopez, and we're gonna do some blood drive related stuff. There's going to be the first ever video to see if I can get this stuff to work on leather, printing blood on leather coats. And so we'll have that video. That's going to be kind of an experimental thing for a guy over in England, Kevy. That's really good, long-time Junker supporter. The other day, I think I made a wisecrack somewhere, and he asked me if I bled on it, because I do, like, cut myself frequently, not on purpose, just because I'm kind of like a klutz like that. And the last time I really messed myself up was I was listening to Sammy Hagar, I Can't Drive 55, came on the radio. And that stuff, like that song and that Sammy Hagar, I don't know. It got me really angry. I ended up cutting my finger really bad, and you can see like some pretty hilarious pictures of that on Instagram up in the little feed there. Um, Pretty nasty. But Kevin knows that I end up bleeding on a bunch of stuff, so he asked if I did any cool like bloody stuff on his jacket, and I was like, well, no. But then my head started thinking, well, man, could I print crazy long bloody snakes on this jacket? So anyway, that's what the experiment's going to be like. That's what I'm going to try to work on when I get there. The other thing that's happening is looks like Poland is kind of moving forward for some overseas stuff that can help people over there, because you guys are getting hammered. I couldn't believe it. And I know we're getting off subject, but I do want to. I got to push Junker, of course. A guy who bought some pants in Canada told me that they were hitting him with like an extra $80 in taxes on a pair of pants that he bought from Junker. So it's like, I got to find like a better way to do this. Canada, our neighbor from the north, the producers of the greatest, one of the greatest rock bands in history, Rush, and they got to pay $80 in taxes to get some pants from Texas. It's an outrage. So I don't know how to really do the Canada stuff. Europe stuff, I think we can figure out. It's going to be a lot easier. Canada, I don't know. Anyway, I just want you guys to know I'm always like trying to think about this stuff, because paying like that much tax after you already paid a bunch of money for the that was like 1/5 of what he paid for the pants, pretty much. He was gonna have to pay in taxes again in Canada just to get it out of customs. I don't know. So we got to find a better way to do this stuff. So back to what we're talking about. So this is the weekend special. Just because I opened my mouth to someone about talking about leather, and then I didn't want to not do it, because at least if he doesn't show up, he knows that it's here, and that I tried to do it. So yeah. So that's what we're going to talk about. So the thing is to keep in mind, so let's go back. We'll kind of go back to what I was talking about. Working for bands and working on movies are similar in a lot of ways and different in a lot of ways, I guess. Working for bands, it's not like the techniques are going to change, but I would say in film, in particular, and probably not. Let's look at the costumes again. And we'll just leave this up for a little while, because we're talking about Alita costumes, and so let's talk about the difference between. Obviously you have your main actors, and then you have everyone else. So like I was a supporting actor, or not much more than a background player. I don't know. I had a title, so I guess I'm considered like a supporting actor, part of the cast. So obviously Christoph Waltz and Kean Johnson have people that work for them and or assistants or whatever, so you get everyone's measurements. And of course, when you're working in the costume department, you want to try to get that stuff as soon as possible, and then you construct these costumes, and you go from there. But for a lot of the other people, you get less time, like way less time. So when I started bothering Robert to play Exploder, Exploder was going to film in, I don't know, 5 or 6 days, I think it was, and they didn't have anybody. And I knew that because I was in the costume department, and we're waiting on people's measurements to send up. Usually, like, via their agent or manager or whoever, somebody sends us the measurements so we can get that stuff going. But when they didn't show up, I saw I had my chance. And I'll be forever grateful. If it's the only acting I do, for a few more years, I'd be still pretty stoked. But I do, I do want to do a lot more stuff. So that was like, maybe 5 days to do that. And then we're talking about quite some time to work on the jackets of Ito and Hugo. So there's a lot of other costumes I worked on as well, Mace and a bunch of other people. But these in particular, we could talk about the differences between, I guess, fabric and leather, because Ito had 2 different jackets. And believe it, this is not all, it's not all leather. It's hard to see, but there's panels in there that are denim. So why do you do that? Why would you do that? How dare you? So what you want to do, if you can get this thing looking bigger, the back of this jacket is hard to see, but there's fabric. Most of the rest of this jacket, as you can see, is leather. So what's the difference between what happened with the fabric that's on the collar here, on his lapel, and the difference between what happened between that and then this leather here? So the thing that happens when I age this jacket is you have to consider a couple things. I mean, the obvious stuff is, well, some of it's leather and then some of it's not leather. But also there's 2 kinds of leather. There's leather that's here on the shoulder that is like kind of a stretchy, textured, I think it's a goat or a lamb skin that has been treated however they treat it. I don't know that much about the technicals. And so that leather is going to act differently than this other leather that you see here on the sleeve and on the main body, which is cow. And then obviously that's going to act different from the other stuff that you see, which is like a canvas, denim-y kind of material, which is on the exposed part of the, like this flappy lapel thing here. Okay, so let's just talk about, like, I'll tell you what I did on all this stuff. So in order to age the textured leather, which is also really hard to see, but it is part of the top part of the collar, but not the bottom part of the collar. And you can see on his left side, the texture is still pretty visible. And I don't know why it kind of turned out this in this photo. It looks a little not as textury as it does in real life. And I should mention that this was shot by Rico Torres. He also shot like a bunch of the Junker stuff that's on my website. He's been shooting stuff for Robert for forever. He did the Sin City posters. He basically is the guy. He's the man. And this stuff looks, he makes everything look completely fantastic. So how do you age leather? What options do you have? The things that I use is, A, like physically abusing it, or B, paint. So I figured out on that textured shoulders there, I wasn't able to sand it without totally like tearing it up. And it tore up really quickly and made some holes and stuff when I did some tests. So the shoulder part that you see is all aged with paint. You just go in there and you dry brush and you splatter and you do all your little creative stuff in there, and then you end up with something that looks worn. So you can age that stuff with paint. And it's just about your colors, because you have to think that when you paint with especially acrylics on leather, that the leather is going to absorb stuff. So you can go like crazy, like yellow ochre with even a little bit of white in it, and you put it on top of brown leather, and it's going to shade down pretty dramatically. So it's kind of, like anything else, like you got to build up your layers and get something that looks convincing. And still with, films, uh, you can go like pretty heavy-handed, because on film, and you'll see like, because in this promo shot of the Alita Ito jacket, in the film, like you barely see any of this stuff, and so even with the application of paint and the other techniques, like in the film, like you may not see any of it. And the thing that I turned Nina Proctor onto that she really likes is wax. So we add that kind of into the aging, into the what do you want to call this? And you know, another trick in the toolbox here is this wax. It's not really wax. It's a chemical that they call wax. It is what, you know, comes on all those jeans and all that stuff. Excuse me. I'm always drinking coffee with duck fat in it. I mean, with like baby skin float. I mean, dog ears in it, and so I'm always like coughing up cartilage and stuff. Sacrilegious. So now I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, so wax. It's just a chemical, but what it does is it just gives it like another layer of stuff going on. And a lot of this is about layering. A lot of it's about texture. Because in films, when you shoot dark, like Robert, I consider him to be a guy that ends up shooting pretty dark on some stuff, especially on this film. If you don't have some textures in there, you just get into these big shapes, which works good if you're doing Sin City, when it's supposed to be more cartoony, but this tends to be more realistic, so having more textures is better. And so texture obviously is not always done with texture. Texture can also be done with like waxing and paint splatters and stuff, and your eye just turns it into something, you know. And that's the great thing about the human eye, is it likes to just see stuff. Hey, there's Jonathan. Hey, what's up, Jonathan? So the techniques on here are, there's painting and waxing. We'll just kind of lump that together. And then there's a lot of just sanding and little cuts and a bunch of stuff that you can't see. So on aging leather, for the most part, what works best for me, even though it's the much more labor-intensive thing, and it seems to be, I don't know, man, it just seems to be the way to go, is getting in there and just sanding the crap out of stuff. I use, for me personally, I just always grab 60. It's 60 grit sandpaper, and I go to town. I'd rather do that and work on the pressure of my application of the sandpaper than dick around with, like, you know, 120 grit or something, because on film, like, that stuff's barely going to show up. I mean, it's still really, really good to do that stuff. For instance, you know, when you're shooting a film, you know, you're talking about a lot of mediums and a lot of close-ups on people, so stuff that happens on their collar and all that is really important, and it looks really big on screen. And then you have to have a more subtle touch, and then I still 60 grit that stuff to death. Just I don't press as hard. And then when you really want to get it like kind of nice, I do use, I think it's a 120 or a 160, like a sanding sponge. Those things are really good for fabric. And so there's probably a little bit of that on this Ito jacket, on the tips of the stuff that's the fabric on the lapel part. But for the most part, I was like just brutalizing it with 60 grit. And yeah, the jacket is brown. His hat's brown, his gloves are brown. All that stuff on film looks like much, much darker than it is in real life, but it was brown, and this poster is probably the closest to the real colors that I've seen. In fact, it's pretty dead on. And so, you know, you'll see like there's a lot of sanding in this picture that you can pick up and see. Now, it's harder to see, but on the cuffs and everything, you know, I'd come back with like wax and paint and try and make things like little greasy and grimy. And then the same things are done with these kind of like clasps that you see on the sides. Now these clasps are were purchased somewhere, and then we added some more studs to them, and then I went in there and painted them and used this stuff called magic black, or black. I think it's magic black is what it's called. Oh, I can't remember if it's called magic black or black magic, and I just don't think it's black magic, because I think that's like an incense I used to buy in the 70s when I was getting Frazetta posters of the Death Dealer and buying like weird Frank Zappa records by the Kmart at the weird head shop that was over there. But yeah, that's pretty much the stuff about the Ito jacket. So, for instance, and let's talk about like how that has a practical application, perhaps in your life, and you wanting to age some leather. So chances are, you know, like when I started, if you start the same way, you're gonna get a leather jacket from somewhere and go to Dogtown on it, right? So let me tell you the stuff that I think that you could buy. And is there a link in the description below? No, because I just was thinking about this list right now. And when I do my regular ass tutorials, like there'll be a lot, I'll give you guys a lot more information. So I appreciate it. This is like kind of just see like what people really want to know, and to show you guys some of my work and to talk about things that you can do. But if you have like a regular jacket at home, and these are chemicals, and you know, protect yourself as best as you can. All this stuff is super, you know, a lot of this stuff is pretty nasty, and you don't want to die young before Alita 2 comes out. So make sure and get some protection. So if you have a jacket at home, the first thing that you can do is you have to look at these jackets and think, what is this jacket made out of? And I know we're talking about leather, but a lot of times they have some stuff that is not leather, that looks like leather. And if you start sanding this stuff and you don't know what you really have, you're gonna chew it up like really fast, and then you'll be sad because it's gonna fall apart like really fast. So make sure that what you have is actually leather, yeah. And when we're talking about what you may have, and after you've determined that it is leather, and you know, read the tag if there's still a tag. A lot of people will try to like pull off like some crap and sell it to you as leather. It's not always leather. If you have any question about whether it's leather or not, get some sandpaper, go to the back of the jacket, flip it so you're on the inside where you can get a little bit of that fold over, and get some sandpaper and give it a little scrub and see what happens. If it's leather, you're gonna know it, and if it's not leather, you'll be able to tell. The reason you're gonna be able to tell if it's not leather and it's some kind of like vinyl or some other crap is you're gonna chew through the part that looks like the leather really fast, and you're gonna see some like fabric-y BS underneath that, right? So if it's leather and you decide to go to Dogtown with some sandpaper on it, once you go through the leather, there's nothing. I mean, it's leather. So depending on how it's been treated and where it comes from, you may be able to sand through the color of the leather. And then what you're going to end up looking at is either if it's been like kind of treated on the surface, you'll get through the black or the brown, and there's going to be like the tan underneath. So the tan color is like the skin color. And depending on how they do it, some people they can color just the top layer. A lot of the leather that I use, like if you look at the skin, the top of the skin is black, and then the underside, the suede side, is also black, because that thing has been put like in a vat of doom and dyed completely through. And in that way, when you scrubbity scrub on the surface, it's going to get lighter, but it's not going to totally, become tan. So it just depends like how they've colored the leather that you have. But you'll know. I mean, most people have plenty of common sense, and you'll be able to figure it out. If it's some kind of mystery, you can always send me a picture and say I don't even know what this is, because there is other stuff that they're doing, which is pretty crazy. There's some really, really good fake leathers. I just don't tend to use them because I just don't think it holds up as good as the real thing. But if you're a vegan or something and you don't want leather, I totally can make stuff out of that fake leather. That's going to be cool. So these are things you should do if you want to age your jacket. For one, figure out what it is. Make sure it's leather, since we're talking about leather. And then we'll talk about denim. And then get your sandpaper and then double, triple make sure that it's leather. And then figure out how you want to age it. And so the next set of problems that you may run into, or the next biggest problem that you'll run into, is that the leather has like a finish on it. So, for instance, if painting's going to be part of your thing, as well as sanding and other stuff, it's a good idea to get the finish off there. Okay, and so there's this stuff called deglazer, and that's the stuff that I use. There's probably other stuff like other people I'm sure have other opinions on what they want to use. Deglazer is the best thing that I know of to go ahead and get the finish off your jacket, and it's going to be, if you're going, depending on like what kind of look you're going for, but if you want to age this thing up pretty good, go ahead and get the finish off the jacket. It's just kind of going to be a pain in the butt and in your way, and it's not really it's the paint's not going to stick as well if you have like this shiny kind of or a semi-gloss kind of finish that they put on top of this leather stuff. So get that off. You get your deglazer. Make sure you have a mask. This stuff will melt your freaking eyeballs out. So this stuff is nasty. So make sure you have a mask. If you want to wear eye protection too. Doesn't really help, but if that stuff flicks up in your eyeball for some reason, then it's going to be like one of your least favorite days ever. Put on some gloves and get yourself a rag, and then just go to town on it. And you'll see, as soon as you start wiping it, you'll see color come off on your rag. And that's it if it's leather. Like if you somehow thought what you had was leather and you start trying to deglaze it and you see the surface of whatever you're working on start to like wrinkle up strangely, it's not leather, it's something else, and that deglazer is like melting it to death. So what you have there is some kind of synthetic replicant skin stretched over something, and then it's not leather, so we have to talk about something else to age that stuff. But leather, get the deglazer, get all the stuff off there. And so when we did the stuff in Alita, for instance, the deglazer did not come into play in either of those two jackets. And the reason being, this is why you don't necessarily have to use the deglazer, is deglazer seems to come into play when you have manufactured goods that you have that then you're going to like beat up. The Ito jacket and the, let's look at this stuff again. The Ito jacket and the Hugo jacket are made from skins, full skins that we buy. and you can sit there and look at the finish. And you can get stuff with really crazy finishes on it. Like there's a type of leather I used to buy called Capri, which looks like it's got like a gloss on top of it, for instance, right? And so the stuff that I buy for Hugo is a type of leather that has more like a matte finish, and same with the brown. It had like more like a matte finish. We knew that it didn't have a bunch of crazy layers of like glossy stuff on it, so we didn't have to go crazy with the deglazer. Like some people, could suggest that you should get some alcohol or something and then just clean your skin anyway. That's fine if you want to do that. I don't think I ever do that. It just, you're gonna beat the crap out of it anyway. So I don't know why you want it to be clean to then beat the crap out of it. If you get my thinking there. So the Ito jacket, I feel like I've kind of explained. So just to go back over it really quick, it was mostly sanding, and it was wax on the parts that are fabric. There was paint dry brushed on top of the shoulders there, and then on the collar. And what's really hard to see is because you don't see the bottom of this jacket very much at all, is on the bottom of this leather jacket. It was heavily sanded, then came back with some texturing, so it looks like he had like kind of street mud and street sewage, gross shit dried on there. And that was just acrylic paint, using like a applicator sea sponge and stuff. You can get some like textures and stuff going on. That was the only other stuff on that. The whole liner of that jacket, you can't really see it in the film, but it's all waxed canvas that then was lightly sanded. And like I said, there was five or so of those jackets. And on the other jackets, like you'd have to do some screen grabs and figure it out for yourselves. But I mostly use like a boat stitch, and so the idea on the Ito jacket was, since he's a surgeon, he would have done some pretty cool stuff to like patch up his little holes. So he tried to mix up a bunch of these different stitches. Some of his little repair jobs had really tiny stitches done in them, like they were like 1/8 of an inch. They were all perfect. When he repaired his shoulder, he put on a patch, and then we put like these tiny little nail heads where he like nail headed all the patch down, and then did some stitching on that. So we tried to come up with some clever ideas for him to have repaired his jacket, and all that stuff is, I would think, probably impossible to see. If I ever get back over, I will get back over to Troublemaker sooner than later, I'm sure, and then you'll see more pics of that, I hope. So the same thing pretty much goes for the Hugo jacket. The big differences on the Hugo jacket are that there's a lot of paint on there, and it's pretty hard to see in the film. He has some racing stripes. Basically, one side of his body was like all greasy paint looking stuff. And so for that, it's you use this. What you use is you want to get some paint, and then you'll get like an extender base. That's a semi-gloss, and you just water your paints down. You can make like washes of oil and stuff. So that's pretty much what happened on Hugo, as well as like as well as a lot of sanding and splattering and all that other kind of stuff. But that's basically it. I mean, you would think that this stuff is a lot more high tech than it is, but you know, a lot of it's paint and stuff. So that's that kind of stuff. Now, for instance, when you do, I'll show you some unsavory characters right here, and we can talk about this stuff as well. So when you do background people or supporting actors, you have way less time. Yeah, it's just how it is. So this is the guy with the big crazy headpiece on. That's Sam Medina. He's been in a bunch of Robert Rodriguez stuff. He's a monster. He likes to work out, and really great, really great guy. I think him and Alan are buddies. So Alan's the other guy back over here. So with Alan, so with Sammy, let's talk about Sammy. Costume wise, we basically just got a bomber jacket and just did some modification on it, added some patches and some aging and stuff, because he was going to appear in this jacket in the scene where you get introduced to all these assassins, and it wasn't going to be on screen very long. And then you have to realize in these films, like all the costumes are broken down like by character, and they all have like a little set budget, like by their name. So this stuff has all been figured out, and you want to try to like stay in the budget, obviously. So Sammy was pretty easy. Now Alan, the other guy, Mr. Allen, there was nothing to do. He's wearing a gray suit, and then the rest was the makeup department. Put that thing on his head, his little kind of like Omega symbol, and they did some other stuff on the side of his head. I think he had to wear partial like bald cap that was painted gray. So I think Weta came in and did some stuff on there. So for my costume here, what you're looking at a few different things. So the jacket is a store-bought jacket that we took the sleeves off of. Now, when we talk about budget considerations for how you may or may not do other characters, I have a lot of tattoos on my arms, on my neck, chest, everywhere. So the production art for Exploder is a weird skinny dude with not a bunch of tattoos on his arms that is kind of like standing by this rocket engine. So when I got cast for the part, it's like a budget issue. You're like, okay, you can either A, wear long sleeves, or B, it would have had the K&B makeup department spraying out all of my tattoos on my arms, which I don't know how long that would have taken them, and then maybe put a couple of fake tattoos back on my arms. So since that wasn't going to happen in the costume department, it's just said, okay, yeah, long sleeve, aged slightly. Looked at the production art. You get the stuff that matches as close as you can. You start aging the crap out of it. So the goggles and the cap were purchased somewhere. The jacket was purchased somewhere. The arm armor, which I wish I had a better shot of that, is some stuff I cobbled together out of the parts in the back just to make it look like the production art as closely as possible. And I was wearing like some gloves, and that was when I aged that's aged with a lot of tinted waxes and then a lot of acrylic paint washes. So I was just there with a paintbrush and the blow dryer. So even though this is not denim, this is like that nylon jacket, like bomber jacket stuff. The best way to go after it, at least I thought, and do it quickly, is acrylic paint. Acrylic paint is the same stuff that you used on the Ito jacket. Acrylic paint is a lifesaver, and it's pretty much works on almost everything. So that's a pretty easy way to go. So with denim, it kind of works the same way, but you have to picture that denim, the paint is going to soak into the denim. So for denim, you want to go ahead and sand it, and then get your paints mixed up, and then mix your paints much brighter than the effect is that you want. But then you put it on there, and then when you blow dry it, it's going to lighten up a bunch of shades. Kind of like what happened to the leather that was on the shoulders of the Ito jacket. So it's still like the basics are paint and sandpaper. And the other thing that's good to have is just a bunch of spray bottles. I use spray bottles a lot, and you can mix up your different paints and spray bottles and spray them on things to get different effects, splotchy effects, worn effects. I remember the first time I really got introduced to some of this weird aging stuff, I was in RoboCop 2, and I was talking to the girls in the costume department because I was looking at these leather jackets that looked really old, and it was kind of like blowing me away. And then I remember talking to them, they're like, "Oh no, it's like yellow spray paint." And when I got closer and looked at these jackets, it was all just like yellow and kind of tan and brown spray paint. That when you're standing like 10 feet away, it looked like a really worn leather jacket. It was all paint. I mean, you can go crazy with spray paint too. The problem is when you're working on a film, or at least the way the art department is set up, is you can't be spray painting in that stuff because all these offices are kind of attached to each other. So if you want to spray paint, you have to go out of the costume department and then about 500 yards to the back of the building, and then there's like a spray area where you can do that. Or if you don't want to do that, you can use a bunch of acrylic paints. You can still come back with a chip brush, cut half the bristles off the chip brush, and then you use your thumb to just splatter paint on things. And that works pretty good as well. So there's a couple different things you can do. Like that's like the basics to aging, leathers in denims. It's kind of the same stuff, A lot of it is about the hand, how hard you want to press, relating to your sandpaper, really. And that's kind of that. It's hopefully I gave you guys a bunch of information about the costume department on Alita that you didn't know about. Because I want you to know about all this stuff that happens. Obviously, there's so much stuff that you have to do to make these things work, these films, and a lot of it you have to remember is stuff that you can do like really fast. Like I said, if you have some supporting players and they just show up the day of, and someone gets a wild idea, and they want them to look super crazy, you have to just work really, really fast. There's like no way around it. So I mean, that's a lot of the stuff you learn when you're doing these projects is the speed. So the speed relates more to movies than it does to working with bands. And so if you think about it, the fastest way to do stuff is with paint. And there's also a lot of airbrushing and stuff happens. So here's some aging. You can see this is a bunch of the junker stuff. So all this stuff works on leather and denim. Like in the picture in the middle, that's me, and that's UC from 69 Eyes. I think it was the Perfect Skin video that we shot. But you know, there's in this picture there's leather and there's denim. It's all been aged, like pretty much using all the techniques and stuff that I've been talking to you guys about. I know it's obviously easier to pick up this kind of stuff when you can see it in person, and that's what we're gearing up towards, and that's what you guys will get here soon enough. When I get to LA next week, we'll start doing that kind of stuff. But you can see here that on this the jacket to the right, that's the officer's jacket. That's a combination of screen printing and sanding and paint and rust effects and more sanding and more paint. And to me, like, the thing that really makes stuff look, I think, good is just doing layers of that stuff. For instance, you do like a layer and a layer of paint and stuff, and then sand it, and then do another layer of paint, and then sand it, and then so forth and so on. It just it's like the effort pays off, because you have to think about the main crazy difference between junker designs and then working on films is people are going to wear this stuff and like look at it like all the time, and as time goes on, they're going to notice more stuff. You know, so having a lot more layers of things to look at, I think, is good for, you know, the fashion part, and probably not so good for the movie part, because, like I said, time constraints. One army green jacket with leather sleeves did for Steven Tyler is crazy. I love the cuffs. Oh, yeah, I'd have to see a picture of that. I'm pretty sure I know exactly what you're talking about, though, because Steven Tyler doesn't own a bunch of Army stuff. I think there's a picture of him. So Steven Tyler is something else. So he made sure that when they got he got a window dedicated at the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, that Junker Designs name was on there. Because the costumes in the case, like 2 out of the 3 costumes were Junker costumes that I guess he donated to the Hard Rock. I'm not really sure. But when we did the big press event and everything there, and he did, oh yeah, that's another thing, is he was wearing red capri pants. And capri is the finish on the leather. So if you find that picture, that's what that capri leather looks like. And he's wearing a denim and leather jacket. Or no, it's called moleskin, actually. It's German moleskin. And leather sleeves. And the German stuff is vintage. I take all the stuff apart and recut it to my pattern. So when you see the jacket on the left here, the denim and leather studded crazy jacket, I really love to recycle and upcycle a bunch of stuff. So when I do that, I get the jacket, I tear it all apart, and then put it back together, but to my pattern. So it's about the fit as well. So that German moleskin that Steven Tyler's wearing has been recut to his pattern. And then there's leather sleeves, and I think there's what is there, like an arm cuff on there? One of you guys got to pull this picture up and like send it to me, or I can try and find it right now online. It's Steven Tyler. It's like the Hard Rock dedication window. I think it was called. I don't know. It was a pretty big event, and then we actually did a fashion show there as well, and it was man, it was really cool, and the Hard Rock paid for him, so that was I'm trying to remember how much it cost to get him to speak. He spoke for, I don't know, 10 minutes or something. And I think they gave him, upwards of 40 grand, I think, or something. If you go to Hard Rock, yeah, there's a pretty good picture on here. It's Steven Tyler is honored with a memorabilia case featuring costumes, and it's what is this, Alami? Some stock photo page, but yeah, I should feature that on my. I'll put it up on the Instagram. Yeah, a glass of wine. Yeah, that's Steven, all right. So it probably has an arm cuff on there that we made. I think it says Junkers, a lightning war, or something like that. But if you find this page and you look at it, you can see the pants that we made, jacket that we made, another orange outfit that we made. It's all Steven Tyler related stuff. I don't know if that case is still there because I haven't been there in a really long time to Las Vegas to actually like have a look. But that would be great if it was still there. That'd be freaking amazing. This, where did you send it, or are you trying to put it in the feed on the YouTube? Because I didn't know if I could actually see stuff in a feed, but that would be great if I could. Steven Tyler Hard Rock window dedication. I'm trying to see if I can find it too, because I don't see anything coming up that you're trying to post, but I'm sure it will sooner or later. It's in the chat. I'll send it to your Instagram. Okay, let me look at it in the Instagram. I'm not seeing the one in the chat. But thanks, you guys. This is really fun. You guys can send me stuff so I can figure out what the hell we're talking about. Waiting for it to pop up in the Instagram. Sent it to my Instagram. Did you? Or is it under request? Oh, Bindle. Oh, okay. The image is blurred. Tap to reveal. Yes. Oh, okay. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I don't know if you guys can see it's a link that doesn't work. I don't know if, Adam, I don't know if you can actually put it in here. Add it to the chat. But yeah, that's this German moleskin stuff that I love. It's from the 1950s and maybe into the 60s. And in that picture, he's wearing capri. Is the name of is how they call that finish on the leather. So we're talking about different kinds of finishes. For instance, if I wanted to mess those pants up big time, I would have had to have got that deglazer and got after it. Yeah, and I think it says Junkers, a lightning war on the armband, and then that's probably deerskin sleeves that have been sanded and bleached and messed up. And yeah, that was really great. You can see Junker in the background. Now, all this happened, because Steven Tyler said it should happen. And so you gotta love Steven for that. So I mean that's some really crazy memories. And I don't. There's a bunch of pictures of that fashion show too. So I've done like a ton of fashion shows, but then stopped for quite a while because they takes a lot uh, takes a lot out of you. Wait, are you the one that wanted to hear this whole video about aging leather, Adam? Because that Bindle Stiff, maybe I shouldn't say that out loud. I feel like you're not the one that asked about doing the leather thing. Yeah, it's all good. But yeah, this is yeah. Well, I mean, whoever the photographer is, they want to get paid for their stuff and everything. Okay, sorry, got distracted. I was trying to find some other pictures to talk about on the Steven stuff. So the other thing that's going on, because I want to make sure and tell you guys about this. I don't know where all you guys are from. Oh man, hey Jedi Philosopher, I didn't even see you jump in here, dude. Hey, so I hope you're still here. Sorry about that. So I like to try to read what people are saying, and so I kind of miss some stuff. But yeah, so to kind of go back to Rust's novel, Junker is a blitzkrieg. Yeah, so that's the armband that he has on. Jedi Philosopher says if Zapan rampages in the sequel, I'd love to see Exploder there trying to stop him. That would be a short fight probably, but man, that would be awesome. That'd be awesome. I think they should open the sequel with the, Exploder, rolling off the track there, all like, I guess I would have been beat up, or I don't know. Like, it's so weird. Like, I feel like they must have cut some stuff out because my guy basically gets no damage at all, from what I can tell from the film. I fire a fireball at Alita, then I guess I ran away. And like I've told the story before, when I text Robert to ask him, he just said, Exploder lives to fight another day. And I was like, well, that would be awesome. That'd be super awesome. And I would think that someone would have to report back, to the powers that be at Zellum, up in Zellum, about what happened. Even though I'm sure that, he sees everything from up there. I don't know if maybe Exploder chickened out, and these guys are also promised a path to Zellum, to the up above. I wonder if then some assassins will try to take my guy out. Because that could happen. I would think that the demand would be to fight to the death. I mean, there was a reward to get Alita, so I guess if you just didn't get her, then what's the big deal? You just don't get the reward. But I think Zapan should come back with some weird, like, giant staples in his face or something. Might be pretty cool. But definitely, there's a lot to be said to the amount of revenge that Zapan would want to take on Alita for chopping half of his face off. His beautiful face. So, I mean, that could happen. I mean, to push it forward, of course, he's going to have to go up to Zellum and take down the powers that be. And that's probably, farther off in the manga than I've been. I bought all the ones that related to the film that I was going to do at the time, so I think I got volumes 1 through 4 or 3. But yeah, if there's Alita people in here would know better than I would. Like I said, I grew up on a bunch of stuff related to, Japan as cartoons. Wow. Okay. Yeah. The manga I said, I think I got up to 3 or 4. I was writing or reading that stuff pretty crazily um, on the airplane before I was going to start the film, so I don't remember all that stuff. But if he's the super, I think he's the super blood crazed maniac one, right? That's sucking spine juice and killing a bunch of people, or was that how they presented Garushka in the mangas? That'd be cool if you could like fill me in on that. That's kind of like where things get a little fuzzy, but I know there's a really insane spine fiend, and maybe that's what maybe that's Zapan as well. Because it was kind of like Garushka just didn't. You didn't get a feeling for like what he did except for just act as a henchman. So I hope you are talking about Zapan, because there's one guy in the manga that actually scared me because he was crazy about spine juice, and hopefully that's him. That's him. So I mean, I think we're all hoping for the sequel for sure, and that would be nothing short of, I think amazing, right? I mean, we definitely want that stuff to happen. So here's these guys again. Oh wow, really? God, man. Okay, I need to look at that stuff again. Everything's in my bookshelf. But yeah, if he's crazier than the super crazy spine guy, then man, yeah, they could totally do a whole movie about that evolution. That just sounds insane, and I'd be totally down for that for sure. Since you're, what else do you think would happen then? So that would be wow. Okay, Japan. That sounds really badass. So that offers a really huge challenge. That could almost be like a whole movie, because obviously Alita would be wanting to get up to Zellum to take out what's his name? God, man, my brain is the dead brain. To take out Norton, Jewelhead, Cyber Glasses dude, and Zapan would be getting in her way at every turn. So that would be good, because there has to be some kind of balance, because she is like really pretty powerful, and you definitely don't want to have like a Mary Sue, Nova. There you go. You definitely don't want to have her like get Mary Sued into another character that just can beat everybody up. The other thing that I think would be interesting to see while we're just talking about this is that, because she's somewhat, she's kind of like a replicant. She's somewhat emotionally immature. It seems, maybe because the only thing she did was fight, and she kind of doesn't remember a bunch of that stuff, although it's pretty like embedded in her character. It seemed like she could be pretty easily manipulated, though, like emotionally. You see how readily she was going to give her heart to Hugo, like a guy that she didn't really know that well, that was also kind of like a shifty guy. And to have someone like Nova like manipulate her or try to control her via emotion or uh, something like that would be a really interesting angle, because physically you could say that she'd be pretty hard to beat, even though like Grushka messed her up big time. Um, and then it'd be really cool to see her like deal with two different kinds of problems. Physical problems, like, you know, straight up fighting people, but also like learning about uh, emotions, and that, you know, not all people are good, and she still has a pretty innocent view of the way things work. And especially if Nova brought back a kind of like brain dead, but like kind of a puppeted version of Hugo, that might be really cool. Um, and this could be covered in some of the books somewhere. Like I said, I'm not super familiar with stuff beyond the first few volumes there, but yeah, yeah, I think I think going forward that'd be really cool to play on her emotional uh, frailty, or she's just not that aware, I guess, of all the different complexities of people and the good and the bad of people, I guess. So I think, you know, it makes me think of course, of Blade Runner. Um, you know, with only a limited time to. Uh, there's some great lines from. Oh my God, dude, my brain is constantly on brain fart. So with Joe Turkel, uh, yeah, Tyrell, you know, it's like only with only a limited time to you know, deal with their emotional maturity or immaturity, and then they cure that in Blade Runner by having limited lifespans on people. So it doesn't seem like Alita would have like a limited lifespan. In fact, it seems like she's built to last. But emotionally speaking, I wonder if you could maybe just crush her by manipulating her with like a Hugo coming back, you know, that's been totally or mostly taken over by Nova, or still manipulated by Nova, because we know that Hugo's motivation is, you know, he would do crimes to make sure that he could get up to Zellum. So holding that over his head would be seem like it could still work for him. It seems like that's his base motivation. Although I think he really does like Alita quite a bit. I think his greed, or it's not, I don't even know if you would say he's greedy. Just his crazy dream that somehow life is going to be better on the other side of the fence, so to speak, really has him doing messed up stuff. And you could say, you know, he started to change, of course, because he stopped. You know, Tanji was doing some stuff that he didn't like before he was killed. But I still think, you know, in his dream of dreams, like he's in Zellum and not down there. He's not in Iron City with all the other people. He's better than that, he thinks. So I don't know if that would have changed like all that much. I feel like that's his core motivation. I think if you had to just say like, what does he want? You know, he wants to be in Zellum. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Um, you don't. I'm not familiar with all the mangas, as I said, but you want to see someone take some kind of artistic license with the material, or else you're just watching the manga turn into the anime, and then the anime turns into a film. And even though there's like a lot of scenes that are directly, I think, from comic book, from the manga frames, some of the framing, it's not an exact copy, because Motorball doesn't even happen, and it's kind of a different timeline. They kind of like compressed a bunch of stuff, which is good, because I think Cameron was saying like he I think the quote was something about like if he felt like if he just wouldn't really do service to all the cool Alita stuff if he didn't get Motorball in there somewhere. He just had to be in there, because that was like kind of a big part of it. So I think that was a really good decision. Although I think that's taken from the third or fourth volume and then moved to the technically like kind of like the first volume story is. And then things get much crazier. So if you other guys haven't checked out those mangas, they're not in the link below, but they're on Amazon and they're freaking cheap. You can get them used. I think I bought like 3 or 4 volumes and it was like under like $20. I just found a bunch of used ones, because I don't care if the pages are wrinkled or all that. I like it actually when a book like that is like has all kind of soft edges. Anyway, I prefer that feel over the brand new stuff that may give me a nasty cut on my finger or something like that. But so what's gonna happen is tomorrow I'm gonna do another show at 2. Hopefully there'll be something more to talk about. It seems like there always is. Oh, hey Adam, I didn't even say you see that you had to bounce. And so I'll be back tomorrow at 2. Tuesday I'm gonna see what I can pull off. I'm gonna be arriving in LA and trying to see if there's a way to do it without internet over there. I don't even have I don't have Wi-Fi in my studio, because I wasn't ever there enough to want to keep paying money for Wi-Fi. So my friend Eric's gonna come help me. He's like a technical guy. Let's see if we can jump it off of. We'll figure it out. And so then that way you guys can see what the studio in LA looks like, and we'll do streams from there for, I guess I'll be there for 12 or 14 days working on some projects, and then and then who knows. But once again, I appreciate you guys showing up. Have a great night, and talk to you tomorrow.